Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to this council meeting of Tuesday, the 15th of April, 2025 at the Euroa Conference Centre. I am Claire Hewitt-Kennedy, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council, and I will be chairing today's meeting. Before we proceed, I would call on Councillor Carlson to reinforce our councillor vision and values.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council's vision. We will be a councillor group that delivers valuable outcomes for our community through teamwork characterised by respectful debate, collaboration and a commitment to being inclusive and transparent. Our values are respect, integrity, accountability, transparency and responsiveness.
Item 2, acknowledgement of traditional landowners. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today we are meeting on the lands of the Taungurung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty has never been ceded. Item 3, privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed via our live website, Council Meetings and Minutes / Strathbogie Shire link, and made available for public access on our website along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at this meeting, including personal or sensitive information to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item 4, governance principles. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9-2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are numbered 1 to 9 on page 5 and 6 of the agenda. Voting. If a meeting is open to the members of the public or is being live streamed, voting on any matter may be by any method resolved by council that enables those in attendance and those watching the live stream broadcast to clearly see which way council has voted at the time a vote is taken. In the absence of the council resolving an alternative method, voting on any matter is by a show of hands. Outline on how the meeting will work. We welcome the people in our public gallery and also those viewing this meeting through our live stream via our website. The meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire governance rules. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we are unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will continue with the meeting given the public gallery is open. If a councillor or officer has a conflict or of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. The public gallery is reminded that as this is a public meeting, we respectfully ask that all attendees remain quiet and courteous during the meeting. Item 5, are there any, apologies, leave of absence. Are there any apologies or leaves of absence for today's meeting?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall be absent from the council on the 24th of April until the 1st of June this year.
Thank you, Councillor Carson. That can be noted for future meetings. I'd also like to make a note that Councillor Fiona Stevens is joining us on Teams, so it's not recorded as an apology. Item 6, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Councillors, I will take all papers as being read. That being the case, are there any disclosures of conflicts or conflicts of interest?
No conflicts that I'm aware of, Mayor.
Okay, page 7. Item 7. Confirmation of meetings decisions of the previous meeting. Confirmation of the meetings decisions of the ordinary council meeting held on Tuesday 18th of March 2025 and the extraordinary meeting held on the 25th of March 2025. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have the motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Can I move the motion as is stated in the recommendation on page 7 of our papers, please?
Can I have a thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Holloway, seconder. Okay. Councillors, are there any questions or clarifications before we proceed? Is there any? No. Is there any opposition? Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Is there any? No. 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 Is there any opposition? As there is no opposition, does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Thank you, councillors. I now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 9.1, Mayor's Report. It has been a very busy month as my fellow councillors and I continue to work on and refine our Community Vision 2025-29 Council Plan and other strategic documents that need to be in place by 30th of June. It's all taking a huge collaborative effort between councillors and Tim Tamlin and his executive and finance team to finalise the draft 2025-26 budget. The draft budget, community vision and council plan and other strategic plans will go out to the community in coming weeks for consultation. We're excited to present these documents to our residents and receive your important feedback before they are finalised in June. Strathbogie Shire Council is Secretariat for the Hume Region Local Government Network Group, and I chaired a meeting of the group in March. The Hume Network Group represents many regional councils in the Goulburn and Ovens-Murray region of Victoria, and we're committed to supporting the development of Australia's regions. The network is a vital link between regional stakeholders at all three levels of government. Our committee act as real-time advisors to government on critical regional development issues, opportunities and challenges in our regions. Tim Tamlin and I were also fortunate to meet with federal member for Nichols, Sam Birrell MP, to discuss federal advocacy priorities for our shire. This was a very valuable opportunity for our council to advocate for projects that are important to our residents leading into the federal election in May. In early April, I was able to catch up with other regional mayors from our area in Benalla. This was a great chance not only to meet some of my fellow mayors in person for the first time, but also to discuss mutual challenges and opportunities that seem to be common to most municipalities in our region. The discussion was robust and collaborative, particularly around the proposed fire service levy amendments to rates and exploring shared services to reduce costs. And I commit to moving that forward. One of the highlights of my duties this month was to preside over the official citizenship ceremony in Euroa on the 18th of March and welcome new citizens to Strathbogie Shire Council. Please join me in congratulating Strathbogie's newest Australian citizens who took the pledge this month, Andre and Patricia Duploy of South Africa and Su Ching Chen of Taiwan. Our local communities are vibrant and committed, and these past weeks I was able to attend a number of community events, both in an official capacity as mayor or as a guest. I was thrilled to attend St Joseph's Primary School in Gambia and have a session with Year 5 and 6 students and their committed teachers about leadership and civic duty. I'm happy to report that our future is in very bright hands. The APS Regatta Heads of the River was an outstanding event held in the Gambia and draws many visitors to our region. What a brilliant way for our communities to showcase and support this important regatta and for our visitors to experience the best hospitality our shire has to offer. The Euroa Historical and Genealogical Society celebrated its 60th anniversary this month, and I was thrilled to join our committee members and residents at the museum in Euroa for an afternoon tea to honour this important day. It was fabulous to hear stories from the life members of the society and to participate in planting a commemorative tree. The Avenel Community Picnic was held on the 29th of March, and it is an initiative started by Avenel Active in 2024. It provides a free, family-friendly community event enabling residents of all ages and abilities to meet their neighbours and build community by connecting with local organisations, clubs and activities. In 2025, delivery of the Avenel Community Picnic was supported by an event grant from Strathbogie Shire Council. I've attended many sporting events throughout the community and am constantly amazed by the volunteering efforts and community commitment demonstrated by so many to ensure we have healthy and active participation right throughout our shire with shared connection to focus. A special shout out though to a special sporting event held last Saturday, April 20th. I attended the Longwood versus Ngambia game at Longwood. This was particularly special and heartwarming for our community as we remembered Cassie Rawlings, a young girl who lost her life last year with the inaugural Cassie's Day. It saw two clubs working together, and we thank the whole community for ensuring that those who've left us are never forgotten. On Sunday, April 13, I attended the Euroa Miniature Railway opening and Explore Euroa Day. These were both great examples of our community working together with over 500 people attending the Explore Euroa Day and 22 local organisations represented. The Euroa Miniature Railway is fantastic. If you haven't been, do yourself a favour and go for a ride. It was so much fun. It was a wonderful day all round with much robust and positive feedback from the community, and I thank all the staff from the council who worked tirelessly to put these events on. Thank you to all the groups who extend invitations to myself and fellow councillors to your events. These invitations reinforce to me not only the commitment of our residents to their communities, but also the vast number of activities and projects that are occurring quietly in the background across our shire. Thank you. I now move to item 9.2, councillor reports. Before we move on, I would like to invite any councillor who would like to make a brief verbal report to the meeting. No?
Okay, you covered it all.
Thank you.
That was a long report. This one.
I think the mayor's done all work.
Item 10, public questions. Sarah Tamlin, are there any questions from the public?
Yes, Mayor, we have some questions today with two submitters. The first one is Marie Marr. I don't believe Marie's here or online, so we'll take her questions and send her a response in accordance with Council's governance rules. The second submitter tonight is Mr. Tom Marr, and I do know Tom is here with us tonight, so thank you for your questions. So Tom's two questions. The first one is, this truck wash was questioned at council prior to being built. No one took any notice and an administrator passed this to proceed. Now it's a showcase of the Shire's ability to run a Shire. What is the council's money just washed down with this truck wash? Thanks for the question, Tom. As mentioned, there is a commitment to deliver the new truck wash. Council are working through the issues to enable the truck wash to be reopened, and just to be noteful that the existing truck wash is still operational. The second question from Mr. Marr is regarding traffic diversion. The ARTC and Shire are diverting traffic where they think is okay and it's not. Was there a deal made with the residents or Shire to have this traffic being sent down their street of residence? Thanks, Tom. In response to your question, the ARTC, now known as Inland Rail, engaged with Council regarding possible detail options. Council officers are working with ARTC to support the project and minimise disruptions where possible. That concludes our questions for tonight, Mayor.
Very much. So now we move on to the order of business. Moving to officer reports, page 8. We now move to item 11.1.1. Can I just make a note for people standing in the public gallery? There are additional seats, or can we get additional seats for people standing? Item 11.1.1, Planning Scheme Amendment C85 Lot B, Murray Street, Nagambie. The purpose of the report is for Council to consider submissions received for the public exhibition of Planning Scheme Amendment C85 to the Strathbogie Planning Scheme. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? No? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I'd like to move the motion as is written in the recommendation on page 9 of our papers this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Holloway. Is there any opposition? Councillor Halsall.
I understand that this was put in motion some time ago. I also understand. Sorry.
You've got.
Sorry.
So you're opposing the motion.
I'm opposing
the recommendation. As the mover of the motion, would you like to speak to it, Councillor Binks?
Certainly, thank you, Mayor Kennedy. So this is a submission for an amendment to the planning scheme around rezoning of land in Nagambie, and is part of through to provide sufficient general residential zone for the growth that we see across our shire. These processes go through multiple processes in the planning scheme and are delegated to the planners to do, and this is part of the process for us to approve it at this stage to continue the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Housel, as you've declared opposition, would you like to second it first? Okay, seconded. Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Housel, as you have declared opposition, would you like to address the meeting, please?
Yes. This forecasts growth of 1,100 new dwellings to 2036. I believe in a recent report we read that Ngambie already has more than 1,200, which is more than we require to 2036 prior to this change. We're required to have 15 years of residential development available. This is somewhat more than that. The state planning has altered the scheme, which changes the current processes, which also limits the amount of opposition that residents can have to moderate what is being proposed. My concerns around Victoria's desire to build 1,300 houses will result in rapid development. And I think rapid development for Ngambie without the ability to comply to neighbourhood character studies, which we don't have in place, may leave and is likely to leave Ngambie open to some developments that may very well urbanise further a rural town or just be generally undesirable. And given that it's unnecessary, it is not required land, it is outside of our statutory requirements, I oppose.
Thank you very much, Councillor Housel. Councillors, would someone else like to speak for the motion? Yeah. For the motion?
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, this complies with the Victorian planning provisions and all our security documentation. And the community has to understand that we don't actually identify specifically where people develop.
I'll just ask everyone to speak up a bit.
Sorry, yeah, we lost out.
Yeah.
We don't decide exactly where people, we offer an area of land and people have the option of developing it or not, or seeking to develop it through a rezoning, as is this case. And the reason is this is because this is the market-driven process. The investor has identified that this is an appropriate piece of land to develop. Now, all developments have challenges, infrastructure requirements and all sorts of other issues, and the report details mentions in great detail all ramifications and considerations being taken into account. The reality is Ngambie is a little bit more investor friendly because of the lack of infrastructure requirements that say are required in Euroa, which is reality states that Euroa is built between two creeks. It's developed on a floodplain, and that brings with it all sorts of infrastructure requirements, and that curtails to a large degree the decision-making process that allows people to invest and have confidence in their business case. And I think Violet Town's in the same position that has serious flooding issues. The gaunt reality is that on our projections, or the projections that we've been provided with, that Ngambie by 2035 will be a bigger town than Euroa is. And that's a bit of a stark realisation. And but that fact, that projection is reflected in this level of investment that's now occurring. And so it has to be seen in that light.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillors, would anyone like to speak in opposition of the motion? Is there any councillor who has not spoken and would like to address the meeting? Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. As it's already been spoken to, this is led by the owner of the land, and putting it very, very simply, there's a parcel of land that abuts existing residential area in Ngambie, but it's currently zoned as rural. So this is asking that a process be taken to change that to residential. And as I said, it already abuts an existing residential area, so it's a natural area to grow. It has been mentioned by one of the councillors that it could cause rapid development. That's most unlikely because these processes actually take a number of years, and then there will be additional time involved putting infrastructure in place. So the reality is these blocks are not going to hit the market for a number of years down the track. But the other point that was made, I think, is a very pertinent one in relation to neighbourhood character. We are very aware that the neighbourhood character work hasn't been done for Strathbogie. We've spoken to it. It's an imperative high priority in relation to good planning for the future, because it does protect the things that are valued by our community, but it also doesn't impinge growth and good development. So it's all about getting good development. It should be noted that this report is speaking to the fact that it's not just changing the zoning, it's putting in place a development plan overlay, which is extremely important, once again, to reassure the community that we're not going to take substandard development just for the sake of growth. There is a mechanism to make sure that the growth is going to be good growth and good planning. We need growth because we need to be able to get people here to support our doctors, to support our schools, to support our sporting facilities, everything in the Shire right throughout. This one happens to be for Ngambie, but I think we should be welcoming and open-minded to any development that an owner of land is prepared to put up at their expense, which is quite considerable, to make our Shire grow and to get more families and people into our area. So for that reason, I do support this. All the checks and balances have been put in place. All the appropriate stakeholders have been consulted. And there were a couple of minor objections that have been addressed. So the staff have done a very good job in relation to this to ensure that it now progresses through the process that it has to be formally amended and become of the Planning Environment Act 1987. So once again, for this reason, I support it. Under the act, sorry, it doesn't become part of the act, under the act, the requirements, sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Stephens. Councillor Holloway, as you reserved, would you like to now address the council?
I would. Just briefly, I, in principle, share Councillor Halsall's concerns about unconstrained development and development that is not in keeping with neighbourhood character. However, this motion before council is to change a zoning from farming zone to general residential zone. And as such, we are deciding on that zoning change, not future subdivision and or development. So the question at hand should be, is this farming zone prime agricultural land that needs to be preserved such that we would oppose this motion? Two things convince me that it is not. One, as mentioned, is that it is directly abuts the existing developed town of Ngambie, and in fact is nudging into it. The other is that it is separated from the adjoining agricultural land by a railway line. So it is not something, in my view, and having seen it, it is not what I would consider prime agricultural land anyway. It's not something in my view that council should be opposing, given that the concerns that Councillor Halsall have raised can and will be addressed during any development applications or subdivision applications. So I do support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Binks, sorry, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Just picking up on a few of Halsall's comments, the proposal, the amendment was advertised, and there was an exhibition period from the 7th of September to 10th of October 2023 of public exhibition.
The public gallery?
Public exhibition from the 7th of September to the 10th of October 2023, and it's listed in the report all the ways in which people had access to the information that was publicly available, and they could have submitted their objections to it. Then there were 8 submissions that were received to the amendment, and those submissions all came from government and referral agencies, which again are documented as to how they've been addressed in the report that's attached to the meeting. I think Councillor Stevens picked up on the fact that this change from farming zone to general residential zone with a development plan overlay is a really crucial step in the advancement of our planning team, and I really commend them on those works that they've been doing to ensure that when we do rezone land in our shire, we have those development plan overlays to ensure that we get good development outcomes and that we're not ending up with challenges down the path that may arise from missing that step. So I think that in its entirety, it does meet the requirements and should see us having a good result for our community and for all the people that would love to live in this fabulous shire. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'm now going to put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay, we go to page 27 now, items 11.1.2, variation of contract number 23-24-04, municipal settlement strategy referred to as urban growth strategy. The purpose of this report is to approve a second variation to contract 23-24-04, municipal settlement strategy for an additional 6,600, including GST. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
I'd like to move a motion as is written in the recommendation on page 27. Sorry, I'd like to move a motion as is recommended on page 27 of our agenda, as is written in the recommendation. Sorry, gallery. I'm used to having a microphone and we've just changed to a central microphone. I apologise.
That's right. Thanks, Councillor Binks. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition? Thank you, councillors. Would anyone like to speak to the motion?
Just to say it's to continue the important work around our municipal settlement. That's the people. The work we're doing around the rural residential studies, and it's important work that we need to continue to do to continue meeting our statutory obligations in planning.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to add to that, that it's just a change in scope from when the original contract was let that's caused this this variation.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Okay. Well, councillors, I will now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? The motion is carried. Now move to page 31, item 11.1.3. Planning applications received and planning applications determined 1 March 2025 to 31st of March 2025. The purpose of this report is to report to Council on the current planning application activity and matters considered under delegation. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Jeffrey.
Could I move the recommendation on page 31 as a motion, please?
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Binks. Councillor Jeffrey, is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just that this is a standard administrative part of this meeting, noting that there were 9 new planning applications received and 10 planning applications decided during the month of March.
Thanks, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillors will now put that motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. I now move to page 37, 11.2.1, engagement approach to review Council's position to fund events that celebrate Australia Day on January 26. This report presents an engagement approach to Council to inform Council's position relating to funding events that celebrate Australia Day on January 26. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can you have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Director Tingay, I drafted a motion I'd like to move, which I circulated with officers earlier today. Are you able to bring that up on the screen for me? Yes.
This is where we lose the screen, Amanda?
Yes.
Yes, just let him just be patient while we adjust the screen.
So I've, thank you. I would like to move a motion that council uphold the decision made by the Strathbogie Shire Council on the 16th of May 2023 to no longer financially or formally support events that celebrate Australia Day on January 26th, and to uphold the Strathbogie Shire Council's Memorandum of Understanding with the Taungurung Land and Waters Council and continue to advocate for the rights and interests of the Taungurung people and promote principles of reconciliation.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Stevens.
Sorry, Councillor, I can't. Sorry, Councillor Stevens, have you got your hand up?
Yes,
You're seconding that motion?
yes,
Okay, thank you.
No.
Did someone say no?
Yeah, Tom.
That's Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, sorry, Tom, no comment from the public gallery, thank you. Makes it very hard, the process. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Holloway? Councillor Carlson?
Well,
No. Is there opposition?
sorry, yes, I beg your pardon, yes.
Okay, Councillor Binks, as you moved the motion, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, thank you, Mayor Hewitt Kennedy, and I will try and keep my voice loud. We claim to be a council that is committed to respect and inclusion. The decision made by Strathbogie Shire Council in May 2023 was a step towards acting with inclusion and respect at our core. After extensive community and stakeholder engagement during 2022 and 2023, Council stepped away from funding and being formally involved in events that celebrate Australia Day on January 26. The Council did not end nor restrict community events that choose to continue to be held that day to celebrate Australia Day on January 26. It advised Australia Day committees of avenues to access federal funding for their events. Council did not change the date of Australia Day nor attempt to take any action outside of our jurisdiction. We know that some community members' experience of January 26 is a reminder of the ongoing effects and impacts of colonisation. These include the continued dispossession of lands, denial of inherent rights, intergenerational trauma, and institutional structures designed to negate and restrict First Nation participation in Australian society. It is simply not okay to turn a blind eye to the reality of this pain and suffering. The Taungurung Land and Waters Council January 26 statement specifically requests that as partners we frequently consider deeply the views of Taungurung Nation and the actual need to continue celebrating a day which would continue to isolate and segregate the Taungurung people on their own country. Good leadership means standing with all Australians, not just the ones that look like us. I urge you to vote for inclusion and respect by standing with First Nations Australians that have clearly expressed their desire that we do not continue to celebrate a day that continues to isolate and segregate them on their own country.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Stevens, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve my right, thanks.
Councillor Carlson, as you move the motion, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, well, I disagree with all of that, but I'm not going to go into a long litany of the history of the effects of colonisation on Indigenous peoples or anything like that. This council made a decision in January, and we determined that we would come back to the people in April to consult with them. And I thought that's what this resolution was going to be about. So we'll have to test councillor Binks's motion in the chamber, and there's another resolution foreshadowed, I think, should that motion fail.
Thank you, councillor Carlson. Is there any councillor who's not spoken and would like to address the meeting? Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, I speak in opposition to councillor Bink's motion. Based upon the data that has been presented to us from the community surveys in 2023 around this very issue, and importantly, it's our objective to understand what communities' feelings are and feedback, and also acknowledging that it's a very divisive issue and a very sensitive issue, and one that's extremely difficult to resolve. The community has been engaged in the past, and in 2023, in the engagement, with the questions being leave it as is or change. In total responses, leave it as is. In the raw data, 66% of our community who responded said leave it as is, not to change. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, is that the councillors at the time made a decision not based upon the community feedback at that time. Since then, in my own town of Avenel, there was a Shire supported through grant money survey done in the Avenel community through Avenel Active, and 73% of respondents in Avenel in the 3664 postcode responded that they wanted to continue Australia Day celebrations on January 26th.
Thank you, councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Stevens, as you reserved your right, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. The reason I seconded councillor Binks's motion is because I believe in transparency and fairness, and to have the opportunity to be heard and to debate. I've listened to the discussion in the chambers, and I'm not supportive of the motion as it stands. But as I said, the reason I seconded it was to give it the opportunity to be debated further. Speaking to what is on the table, firstly, I think there's a typo there. I think councillor Binks is saying no longer financially or formally support. So the no is missing, but we'll take that as read. I think this is something that we still need to get further discussion on from the community. We need to get beyond what we already hold in relation to data and input on this historically. We need to be very clear on what the ask to the community is. It's not about changing the date of Australia Day. We don't have remit to do that. What we're speaking to is, what does the community expect of the Shire Council of Strathbogie in relation to events that occur on Australia Day, full stop. I don't think the information that's available to us currently addresses that adequately. So I look forward to broader community input from all interested parties to take this conversation further so that we can get some clarity. In relation to the second point, I don't believe that we are stepping away by the Memorandum of Understanding with the Taungurung Land and Waters Council if we choose to take a slightly different path to what was decided on the 16th of May 2023. However, it's imperative we discuss with that organisation and other stakeholders as to how we might move forward so that we are speaking on behalf of as many Australians as we possibly can when making our decision. So I seconded it for the reason of transparency and fairness, but I'm not supportive of the motion. Thank you.
So I'm just going to take some advice returns. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Councillor Binks, would you like to exercise a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Again, I guess I would like to, yes, whilst the points raised were absolutely accurate, the data that was collected in that broad engagement didn't ask for great change from what we had. It was sort of a bit in the middle of the road, but there was an opportunity that the council took at the time to take a bold step and choose inclusion and respect and listen to those voices of the Tangerang people that came to us and said and expressed their deep hurt with the choice to celebrate on January 26th. And we took that on and respected that and made our decision based on choosing to be a more inclusive, respectful, kind and caring council. And we, you know, that was our intention, and we understand that, you know, it wasn't about stopping other people that wanted to do their own thing to be able to do their thing. It was around what council was going to do with our money, your money as ratepayers, money we get from the federal government to spend on these things, and to do with our own stance in that position. And so, again, I would encourage you to consider this opportunity to actually step up and be leaders in reconciliation, and to listen to those voices who for so long in this country have been ignored, have been brushed off, you know, considered not a significant percentage of the population. It's not about that. It's about choosing the right thing and choosing caring and kindness and listening to them and saying, look, we do not need to be celebrating on January 26th, and we can choose not to do that under our capacity as council. We're not trying to change the date. We know that's a federal matter, but we can absolutely choose to stand with the Indigenous people that have expressed their desire for us not to continue celebrating on January 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, councillors. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Donna? No. No, okay. Those against?
Can I call a division, please, Mayor?
Yes, you can. Those in favour again? Councillor Binks in favour? Those against? Councillor Halsall, Councillor Jeffrey, myself, Councillor Carlson, Councillor Holloway, Councillor Stevens. And do we have, I'll ask the councillors, do we have any alternative motions being brought forward? Councillor Holloway.
Yes, could I ask Director Tingay to put my proposed motion version 3 on the screen?
Just be patient while we switch screens for Amanda. Thank you. Sorry, Director Tingay.
Okay. I move that council, 1, approve the community engagement approach as outlined in the community engagement section of this report, subject to council refinement of engagement questions, to review council's position on events that acknowledge Australia Day. 2, invite representatives from Tangerang Land and Waters Council and Yorta Yorta Nation Aboriginal Corporation to present to council at a future council briefing. 3, invite representatives from each of the local Australia Day committees or community groups that hold Australia Day events on Australia Day in the municipality to present to council at a future collective council briefing. 4, undertake broad community engagement via community poll in accordance with the approved community engagement approach to include both randomized telephone polling and opt-in community polling. 5, for the randomized telephone polling, authorize the Director Community and Planning to engage a suitably qualified company to undertake in line with the approved community engagement approach. 6, for the opt-in community polling, ensure it is widely advertised and easily accessible to the broader community to provide their viewpoints by all practical means, to include being posted on the Shire's website and paper forms being made available at a minimum. And number 7, receive a further report at a future council meeting upon the completion of the recommendations 2, 3, 5, and 6. With all streams of engagement reported individually, not commingled or combined, and the complete underlying data sets of responses made available to council to accompany the summary report and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. That very detailed motion. Councillor, we have a seconder. Councillor Halsall. Do we have any opposition? Councillor Binks. Councillor, as you moved the motion, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I fully support Councillor Binks' goal of maximum inclusion. I think where we're at after 2 years of this issue is that there are large portions of our community within the Shire, both those with strong opinions on Australia Day and those without strong opinions on Australia Day, that feel that council have been making decisions in the absence of asking them how they feel. So this motion, as expanded from the recommendation, seeks to maximize through 4 separate streams this council getting the community's sentiment by any and all means possible. I think that's important. That's why at the end of section 7, I said the complete underlying data sets. We want to see every single opinion in this Shire to see what people think about the issue. On Councillor Binks's goal of inclusion, I note that in May 2023, we consulted with the Taungurung Land and Waters Council, but to my knowledge, did not consult with the Yorta Yorta Nation Aboriginal Corporation. So even within the Indigenous community, we've not done a full consultation. And with the wider community, that is the number one piece of feedback I get about this issue, is people feel that the Shire has made a decision without their input. We want to get their input, then the decision will come from that. Thank you.
Councillor Holloway. Councillor Halsall, would you like to speak to the motion? Reserve your right. Councillor Binks is opposing the motion. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Look, I think, considering my motion has failed, there's elements of this that I support, but I think that we're going to get, we've got data already that talks to a lot of this stuff. We know a lot of the answers. Yes, we didn't get to speak to Yorta Yorta in 2023, but we can understand from what has been occurring over in our neighbouring Shire, the sentiment perhaps coming from that Aboriginal corporation in regards to celebrations on January 26th. I think I'm concerned that this is going to create more division in our community, more racism on our community notice boards. We've seen it in the past. It's absolutely destructive. It's so horrible for the First Nations people to see that, to witness that. They have dealt with so much in recent years, and the fact that we're going to go out and do further consultation, which could cause further harm to them, concerns me deeply. I'm also concerned that the 0.7 receive a further report at a future council meeting is fairly open-ended, and it doesn't give us a time as to when this will be concluded by, and in effect kind of dragging it on for longer than is possibly necessary. I'm also acutely aware of the impact this has on our staff that need to go through this process as well. So I think there's sort of, I have some real health and safety concerns for those in our community. Most notably, those concerns I hold for the First Nations people in our community who absolutely cause, will receive the brunt of the racism and disrespectful behaviours that we know will come about from this. So for those reasons, I really struggle to support this motion.
Thank you, councillor Binks. Is there any other councillor who has not spoken who would like to address the meeting? Councillor Carlson.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. In January, I'll keep it short. In January, this council voted to support Australia Day in principle and provide modest financial support. We also committed to consult with the community on this decision at about this time, April, I think. We have determined on a very comprehensive consultation process, which should allow for the community's feedback in terms of generating a view of the community's position on this. We do not want to leave anyone behind. We want to know what people really think about this. This issue's been around this chamber for 2 years, and it's time for a final determination of council's decision to be made. However, the final decision of council and its position to be determined will not be made until after the conclusion of the consultation process. So I think I might have said back in January, this is just the beginning, and now we're getting towards the end of resolving council's position on this issue, but only after having a most exhaustive consultation process, probably the most detailed that I've yet seen a local government do on one civic issue. So we ask for everybody who wishes to express their view to please do so. There's plenty of avenues for you to do so, and we encourage people to express that view. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Carlson. Is there any other councillor who has not spoken and would like to address the meeting? Yes. Oh, no, you're the seconder, so just anyone else, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Councillor Stevens, sorry, I just can't.
Yeah, no,
you said it. Councillor Stevens.
Yep, thank you. Just very quickly, I think we're going over old ground, but why I do support this motion is because it is giving us the best opportunity to get the widest view of our community on this topic. Historically, on such emotive issues, you get those that are the loudest for something and you get those that are the loudest against something. I think I'm really hopeful that by doing this as extensively as we are, and particularly with the independent random polling, that we will get that broader input into discussions that haven't been done as well in the past. In relation to the inclusion, I think we're all in agreement. That's the aim of all of this. Respect is another. How we minimise discomfort, if that's something that needs to be addressed, is another thing that we're going to have to consider. But we can't even go down those paths until we get the information we're now seeking. And I'm hoping that what will also be captured in this is that voice sort of in the middle of the people that are, as we progress through this on a daily basis, are becoming Australians. They're choosing to take up citizenship and become Australians. And I think their voice is just as important on this as anyone else's. So I'm really hoping that we will capture some of that as well. So I look forward to this being a guide to a better outcome. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, are there any other councillors who hasn't spoken to the motion yet that would like to speak? Councillor.
Just echoing everyone's comments, including Councillor Binks, I think brought up some very valid and real concerns that I share. And as I said in the previous discussion, this is a divisive topic, and unfortunately it seems that there's the community's being spread out to the ends of the distribution, and it's a really difficult discussion. That being said, there are several data points that remain to be found, and the recommendation that Councillor Holloway has put forward helps to gather some information that we don't have, Tangarang and Yorta Yorta particularly. Also, we haven't spoken directly to the Australia Day committees and community groups that hold Australia Day events. And then the community phone poll, random poll, should give us information from within the community that otherwise perhaps wouldn't come forward and offer their views. So the way I'm thinking about this is that it's the broadest possible approach to understanding what the community sentiment is, and hopefully we're able to utilise that to make a determination and move forward together with all stakeholders.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. I'm also going to speak on the motion. So the first thing I would like to say that we've been through a period of turmoil as a council and as a community, and the consequence of that is that the data that was given in 2023 and the decisions were made are historical, even though the data supported the status quo. The council chose to do something else, but that is historical, and we are a new council. We have press reset for the betterment of our community at a collective and collegiate way. I just want to remind everyone what our vision is, that we will be a councillor group that delivers valuable outcomes for our community through teamwork, characterised by respectful debate, collaboration, and the commitment to being inclusive and transparent. Councillor Holloway's motion supports that 100%. It's inclusive. It covers all of the engagement with all the relevant stakeholders, importantly, the Indigenous communities, importantly, the Australia Day communities, importantly, all the other people that are holding events on Australia Day. And then we have data to support that. We've got to move on from this point. It can't keep dividing our community. Our values as a councillor a councillor group is to be respectful, to do things with integrity, to be accountable, to be transparent, and to be responsive. And I think our job is not to canvass Australia Day, and it's not to say whether we're celebrating it, we're acknowledging it. And that's an important point I'd like to make, acknowledging it. Very, very empathetic to the Indigenous and First Nation people of our nation, and I look very forward to them presenting to council so that we can move forward with the best information. On that basis, I think it's very fair to say that I too support what Councillor Binks said about the impact on staff, and I saw it firsthand on Sunday myself, and I experienced it as mayor. And I'm very conscious that we need to move this process on and this a way forward in a collaborative, community-focused, data-driven perspective. And when we've done that, we have done what we've committed to the community. We are the closest level of government to the community, and our job is to listen to the community and implement that feedback. And that's what we are trying to do, I believe, Councillor Holloway is doing with this motion. And on that basis, I support it. I will now refer to seconder, Councillor House. Would you like to talk to the motion?
I think hopefully we've demonstrated a shared view to support First Nations. We attended a Wawa Big Tour, and it was really interesting to hear Uncle Shane talk about the division within the Indigenous community itself in how it should be celebrated. There were fors and against. I keep reflecting on governing in a democracy. I keep reflecting on the effect that the previous decision had on the community and creating division. I live in a very reasonable community, and I feel like with education that our entire community will embrace our natural history. And I think we should be looking really to support an educative process to record and support the recording of a natural history so that there is that comprehensive understanding. So I am very supportive of the consultation process, hearing from everybody in the community and putting the values and opinions of everybody in front of us so that we make decisions and we go forward together collectively as opposed to divisive.
Thank you, Councillor Hansel. Thank you, councillors. I'm going to count the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I skipped over that. Councillor Holloway has the motion. Would you like to exercise a right of reply?
Just briefly, I am very supportive of Councillor Banks's concerns. regarding racist or other hate speech. And I'm trusting that Shire staff will act to shut that down, as they always do. Because we want no one hurt by this consultation. We only want everyone to have their say in a constructive manner. And regarding Councillor Binks's concerns about the lack of timeline in point 7, I don't want to constrain staff by specific timelines, but I believe for myself and almost everyone around the table, we want to get this issue resolved, because we cannot have it continue to divide our community for into the future, and certainly resolved this year, which would be my expectation. Thank you.
Councillor Holloway. Thank you, councillors. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. I now move on to page 45, 11.2.2. Municipal Building Control Intervention Policy. The purpose of this report is to adopt a municipal building control intervention policy. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillor, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Carlson.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move that the recommendation listed on page 45 regarding the municipal building control intervention policy.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Carlson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only very briefly, it's a very minor it's an updated review of the policy, and very few changes have been made, and it's just one of those necessary pieces of organisational architecture to allow the staff to carry out their duties.
Councillor Carlson. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
No. Would anyone like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Thank you, councillors. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Move to page 71.11.2.3. In compliance and enforcement policy. The purpose of this report is to adopt a compliance and enforcement policy. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Sorry, can we just have the public gallery, excuse me, we just have the public out because the new mic system picks up everything. So just so you're aware, and it's hard for me to hear. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, please, to the CEO through you. This is a reviewed policy, Tim, or a new one?
New.
New, okay. Thank you.
Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I'd like to move a motion as is written in the recommendation on page 71 of our papers this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Holloway. Councillor, is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Binks is the mover. Would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Holloway is the seconder. Would you like to speak to the motion? Thank you, councillors. On that note, I will now put the motion for a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Now move to page 87, 11.2.4 Community Funding Model and Guidelines. The purpose of this report is to provide a summary of the proposed changes and improvements of the Community Funding Model 2025-26 and grant guidelines for 2025-26. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I'd like to move a motion as is in the recommendation on page 87 of our agenda this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. I have a seconder, please. Councillor Holloway. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Housel. Right, just let me get this right. Okay, so now that there's opposition, as you've declared opposition, we go back to the meeting. Okay, Councillor Binks, because you've moved the motion, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt-Kennedy. Yes, I'd just like to thank the staff. I know this is an annual event to update the community funding model and the guidelines that sit alongside it. I know that there's been significant work over recent years to bring those in line with the VARGO report from 2022, which was the Victorian Auditor General Office 2022 Fraud Control over Local Government Grants report, and to ensure that our community funding model was best aligned with those recommendations to ensure that we had fair, fraud-free, compliant granting of council money to our community groups. It's an area of particular interest to VARGO because they've seen quite a lot of fraud in this area in the past. And it's a really important role of council to allocate this funding to our community through these, sorry, I've got a fly bothering me, through these community grant opportunities. It's a great way for our community groups to secure funding to be able to do the projects that they would like to do for their groups and their facilities. And I think it's a really robust piece of strategic policy that has council sitting at that strategic level that then enables the community to make those applications based on those community funding, the model and the guidelines that support that, and to ensure that that money is going to those groups that meet those requirements. One thing that I'm actually very excited to see in this one is the approval of these grants to be done under CEO delegation. I know this was raised and was sought by officers some years ago when I was previously on council, but we weren't able to get it over the line then. This is a really great way to separate our role as councillors, as strategic decision makers, from the operational side of council, where they're making decisions based on the policy that we're creating. So we're creating this policy, it's our policy as council, but they're the ones that are operationalising it and undertaking it and delivering it. It ensures that also our community groups are not held up by having to have their applications for grants come to a council meeting, which can add significant time to the process, as well as additional time for our officers to write up those reports that are required to come to council. So I think it's a really great advancement in that opportunity to ensure that we get the money to the community groups in a timely manner. It's effective. It just makes lots of sense to me. And I know that some councillors have raised the concern around council's lack of oversight, but in the attached guidelines, there's a process whereby those there's a flowchart on page 107 of the council papers of the grant process, and it does go through the processes that happen in terms of, you know, getting in touch with our team, who are really great at talking you through that application process. It's the assessment panel, the CEO decision, and then it comes to council through our weekly newsletter called Council Connect, or a briefing to let us know what's happening. So we do have that oversight. We're just not making the decision. And I think that's a really important separation of us as decision makers at that strategic level to being decision makers at an operational level and handing out who the money's going to. We have been assured by staff as well that any grants that are allocated will also come up for a report to council for noting, so that we can celebrate them, because that is a great opportunity for council to celebrate those grants that are supporting our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Second to Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak or reserve your rights?
I would like to speak, thank you. Yes, quite a bit of work has been done on refining this model, and I also am quite excited about it. I think it fulfills 4 key elements. The budget is right. The delegations, as Councillor Binks said, is a good step of progress in terms of efficiency. The process is excellent and appears efficient. And as Councillor Binks referred to on page 107, the governance is there in terms of the final step. There is council oversight of this. I would just like to say that in terms of process, when I was in the Navy, my chief engineer used to say, ideal process is when routine things happen routinely. And I think this community funding model makes routine things happen routinely, but the oversight is there when needed. So I fully support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Holloway. As you've declared opposition, would you like to address the meeting, Councillor Jeffrey?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I acknowledge what's been said already, and certainly acknowledge the staff's input and efforts and aligning the community funding model and guidelines with the VAGO report of 2022. And I agree with the bulk of the new model and guidelines, noting that there have been significant changes to them in this proposal. What I don't support is the delegation of authority to the CEO. In the previous model, the existing model, councillors had input, worked with the decision makers in the allocation of grant monies. The changes proposed remove councillor input prior to the decision. And to me, elected members in part are here to represent not only geographical, but all other forms of diversity and understanding of our community and our full Shire area. For us not to have any input into the decision, I believe is a mistake. That's compounded by the fact that we have a new CEO coming in, and she certainly won't be in a position to make informed decisions in the immediate term. And I think we could be helpful in providing that information to her and staff in that regard. And contrary to what's being explained, I believe this new model actually reduces oversight, transparency, and the prevention of fraud by taking away that extra level of oversight, being the council or group, the elected members. Fraud can happen within an organisation. It can happen in a council or group, and I don't think removing the council or group from the decision-making process, at least having input into it, is the right way forward for this group this time.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Okay, Councillor. Just let me get there. Look at the other side, though. Councillor, you are speaking?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, beg your pardon.
Sitting on the fence, so I can't speak for all this. No, that's a bit of a
Question, Councillor Carlson. The question was, are you speaking for the motion?
Yes, I will speak for the resolution of the motion. And the reason is that we've been very busy doing lots and lots of things, and we have to review policies. And I think this one's slipped through a little bit, but I'm not yet confident in my own opinion of this. There is a disconnect clearly from the model and reality. We have not been able to reconcile it yet, I admit that. I'm still thinking about it. We have limited input. There is some input, but very, very limited. The oversight is tenuous. And the oxymoron about the whole thing is that the elected community representatives don't have the final determination on the allocation of community grants, which is a bit strange. But I understand the efficiencies and the value added by removing the council decision-making part of the process because of the expedition of grants. It all makes sense. So I think it's one of those things that we should look at when we have time. I'm not set in my ways one way or the other, but certainly I'm somewhat troubled by it all. And I take Councillor Jeffrey's point that it's an oversight role that perhaps we should be involved in and we're not. It's not a significant amount of money. I can understand why the recommendations have come down, and I refer to page 89 on the agenda, community funding model, and I quote, for the community's benefit. Community funding model continues to be informed by Victorian Auditor General's Office 2022 Fraud Control over Local Government Grants Report. Victoria, the Auditor General's Office 2022 report. The review uses 9 recommendations from this report to identify areas for improvement, including, and I quote, excluding councillors from assessing and making recommendations on grant applications. So it's rather difficult for us to insert another level of oversight. It's received a report from the Victorian Auditor General's Office saying that he doesn't think it's a very good idea. And the reason is they don't think it's a very good idea. Of course, there has been major frauds in council, particularly large sums of money in metropolitan councils, quite some notorious ones, where that process has been abused. But yeah, so that's why I'm reporting. That's why I'm supporting this recommendation. But I should certainly like to have a longer time to consider the issue in the next 12 months.
Councillor Hassel, as you get into the motion, would you like to speak in opposition?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Fiona, can you press the thing when you want to speak so it highlights the yellow? Because I don't know. Sorry.
It's okay.
Right.
Actually,
So
it's a
do we have
question
anyone?
of,
Sorry, are you speaking in opposition?
actually, it's a question of clarification. I'm sorry, Mayor.
So
I'm sorry.
is that fine? Yes. Okay. Yep. What's the point?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have asked it earlier. I've just revisited the document on page 107, the process, and I'm a little bit confused. If I could get clarification, please. It says CEO decision. So it's a recommendations for funding decided by the CEO. So there's the delegation to the CEO for a decision. But then that decision comes into council as, I'll use a different word, as advising us of that decision of the delegation. So I'm just querying, if it's a delegation that we give the CEO and he or she makes a decision, when it comes to us, what would the process be to question that decision once the CEO has been given the authority to make that decision? Does that make sense?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. As I understand the process, Councillor, the recommendation for funding decided by the CEO, and in reality, it's just a sign off because we have all these conditions that the grants need to comply with before they get.
Yes, I understand that.
So the staff have an assessment panel. They meet. They'll come up and they'll go, "Yep, we'll give this 100%," and they'll recommend. Then it comes to me to sign off to say, "Yep, I agree." Then it comes to the council notification of the funding decision. Once the council has seen that notification, and I'm happy for Director Frampton to correct me otherwise, once council's seen it and gone, "Yep, got it, happy with noting your decision," then the council could inquire, "Why did you make that decision? That doesn't look right to me." We can have that discussion, but that's still the CEO's decision as the delegated authority. Then once that discussion's been had, then the community people get notified if they're successful or not. So there's a step between the CEO using the delegated authority to approve the assessment panel's recommendation, which is the staff. That then gets communicated to the council. Once the council has seen it, and you've had your Councillor Connect or briefing on it, no feedback or no queries, then the community get advised of their successful application or otherwise. I hope that helps me.
Councillor Stevens, does that answer your question?
No, I'm sorry, it doesn't. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm just not getting this. If we give a delegation to the CEO then makes that decision, and that decision is final because we've given the CEO that delegation to do that. So I don't see at the point where that decision comes to the councillors that there's any room to have input into that decision, only if there is a significant concern. I'm not saying to undermine the process that's occurred, but if there was a concern that was raised at that point, a legitimate concern about one of these allocations of finances, the decision's already been made because we've given the CEO the authority to do that. So there's no comeback to that decision. That's what I'm trying to get clarity on.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. If a councillor came to me after that decision was made, this is me personally, and different CEOs might do different things, and you said, "Oh, what about this?" and that was new information that wasn't considered as part of the decision. That would definitely get reconsidered.
Okay, so you're saying that even though we give the delegation of authority, the decision is made, it wouldn't be seen to be inappropriate to question that decision if we had a legitimate concern, it would be entertained. Is that what you're saying?
Hypothetically, that's correct. Hypothetically, if there was a matter that wasn't understood or taken into consideration at the time of making the decision, I would then question the decision and go back to the officers and seek further information and review the decision. And that's why, Mayor, if I may, this is why it's really important having councillors provide this sort of oversight, because sometimes the councillors do see information and they pick up on things that are out in the community that officers don't. So to have a discussion with the council from the officer's perspective is, to me, a very valuable discussion to be had, just to make sure all the checks and balances are in place. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. I'm now going to refer to Councillor Halsall to speak in opposition to the motion.
I actually am opposing a different part, but have a comment relating to this. So given that I want to raise a different element of this, do you want to separate it?
No, you're speaking in opposition.
Yeah, so just I can bring in whatever I like. Okay.
You're speaking.
On page 118, furthering on from Fiona and Scott's concerns in the diagram, I'm wondering if it should be, because picking up on Tim's, this is my personal way as a CEO and we're just about to change CEOs. A feedback loop should be introduced where it goes from CEO to council, a loop back to depict that reconsider process. That should give broad agreement and convey to an incoming CEO that that is our agreed process. That's just a suggestion. My opposition to this is on page 95. I would like to strike in the community grants funding model, I would like to strike point 4 that says must support the delivery of council CC action plan, focus on reducing emissions. I think our sustainability is far more broader than just climate change, and we should be supporting community sustainability, financial sustainability. I'd also like to add that I oppose the limit of one grant per facility, which stops community groups getting together to support a facility that they all use. Often it is outside of a single grant up to 20,000 what something might want to do for a facility. And to keep our facilities relevant, I think we need to remove that.
Thank you, Councillor Halsall. Is there any councillor who has not spoken or would like to address the meeting? Spoken, haven't they? Yes.
Fiona hasn't. She just did a question of clarification, but she's not indicating that she wants to speak.
Okay, councillor Binks as the mover, would you like to exercise over item 5?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kennedy. So I think it's really important to understand and appreciate that there is so much process behind this, that we have professional officers that undertake the process to ensure that we have robust processes, that the monies we're allocating are going to the appropriate groups, and it's, you know, there's lots of checks and balances that occur in awarding community grants. There's the panel that they run to ensure that they all are required to declare any conflicts of interest if they have them with community groups. We know in small communities we all are involved in lots of different elements of the community. So there's lots of governance around the insurance, that these are fair, fraud-free, equitable, and that they get the best outcome for our community and for councils. Money. We get to make the decision around the budget. So we've decided that we're going to allocate that amount of money that is stipulated in these documents. That's where we get to make the decision. We get to make the decisions around, you know, what does that look like? Yes, Councillor Halsell, our sustainability is so much greater than environmental, but, you know, we need to sort of, I guess, maybe contain it to the environment for this community grants. Otherwise, we're opening up a whole other avenue of funding that needs to be administered as well. So there's a whole process that happens in the administration of the grants, and to be able to do that, maybe it's something we look at, as I said at the start, you know, these funding guidelines, the model is reviewed annually. It's an annual thing. So maybe there's an opportunity to say, okay, how do we go this year? What does it look like? Where are we missing out? What are the community asking for? I know that the staff do extensive engagement to hear from those groups that are eligible for this funding, to see what are the funding models that are going to work for you, that are going to support your needs to be able to deliver what you need to deliver for your community groups. And I think, you know, it just made me think of our municipal monitor, Marg Allen, and, you know, in her other role with the Victorian Grants Commission, you know, she's distributing the money that the federal government gives to the state government, to the councils of Victoria. It's not the state government directly, the ministers that are doing that. So it's, again, thinking about that separation of power and having that intermediary person in there to distribute the money. Like it's around having that separation of us. We've decided what the budget is, what the guidelines are, and now we're giving that responsibility to our officers, to the CEO, to then distribute it fairly, equitably, as matches our guidelines, our funding model, and those governance structures that sit to support it. So I think there's lots of rigour, lots of good governance around this, and I think it will result in some really fabulous outcomes for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. I will now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Okay, councillors, we now move to item page 119, item 11.3.1, contract 24-25-24, construction of Violet Town Street Gate. Stage 1, the purpose of this report is to receive and note the outcome of the tender assessment, contract number 24-25-24, construction of Violet Town Street Gate, stage 1. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? We have a recommendation, councillors. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Halsell.
I wish to move the motion as listed on page 119 of the tonight.
Councillor Halsell, do I have a seconder? Councillor Holloway. So, right. Brain fade then. Sorry, is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Halsell, would you like to speak to the motion or observe your right?
I'm actually really pleased about this, that somebody put in a tender that was outside of our guidelines, and that we are actually sticking to our guidelines and we are not overindulging, which is fantastic. We are not spending money where we don't have to. Well, not that we don't have to, but just supporting a tender that was just outside of our scope.
Thank you, councillor Nelson. Councillor Holloway, seconded. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. I'd like to echo Councillor Halsall's comments and just say that this recommendations that's been adopted as the motion is indicative that the process is working, where we get one respondent quote in an RFQ, and that response is an outrageous quote. We don't just go with it blindly. We use our process to seek a value for money outcome for the Shire. So I'm fully in support of this motion.
Thank you, councillor Holloway. Are there any further speakers? Now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. We now move to page 124, item 11.4.1, Euroa Caravan Park lease. The purpose of this report is to note the request from the Euroa Caravan Park tenant to enter in direct negotiations for a new 21-year lease. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? No, thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? Can you state what your motion is? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move on recommendation listed on page 124 relating to the Euroa Caravan Park.
Thank you, councillor Carlson. Can I have a seconder, please, for the motion? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Carlson, would you like to speak to the motion as the...
Only briefly, Madam Mayor. We've had a discussion meeting with the current lessee, and as a matter of principle, we decided as council to progress the matter of renegotiating the lease. And of course, this will take some time in terms of the detail, but so far there doesn't seem to have been too many obstacles to get over. So we hope for a fruitful negotiation.
Councillor Carlson, Councillor Jeffrey, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Are there any further speakers on the motion? On that basis, I will put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. We move to page 127, item 11.4.2, public interest disclosure policy. The purpose of this report is to adopt the public interest disclosure policy CG following a scheduled review. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? No. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Jeffrey.
Could I move the recommendation on page 127 of the agenda, please, as the motion?
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dees. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to move? Would you like to speak to your motion or reserve your right?
Just to note that this is a review of the existing policy. The public interest disclosure policy and procedure establishes a system for reporting disclosures of improper conduct or detrimental action by Strathbogie Shire Council or its employees.
Jeffrey. Councillor Dees, would you like to speak to the motion? Reserve your right.
Just further to Councillor Jeffrey's comments, it's again another important piece of governance that ensures people can feel confident in being able to report improper conduct and corruption in the Victorian public sector, referred to as whistleblowers, and the knowledge that that they will be protected, and it's really critical to ensure good governance in the sector.
Are there any further speakers on the motion? Let's stop the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Page 153. Item 11.4.3, public transparency policy. The purpose of this report is to adopt the public transparency policy. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, can we have a recommendation? Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the recommendation on page 153 of the papers be adopted as the motion.
Councillor Holloway, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey. Do you have, is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak or reserve your right?
I'll just briefly speak that this is an update of an existing policy and a very important policy it is. It directly assists with the councillor's vision of transparency to the public. So we need this to be on our website so that the public is assured of our commitment to transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion? Or is
Nothing
it-
to add. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Councillors, we now move to item 11.4.4 on page 174, internal resolution procedure. The purpose of the report is to adopt the internal resolution procedure. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Jeffrey.
Could I move the recommendation on page 174 as the motion, please?
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Biggs. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
Just to note that the Local Government Act 2020 has a requirement that we have an internal resolution procedure, and that this document is in response to that. It's a new document as required by the Act.
Yeah, further to Councillor Jeffrey's comments, just that this is a new quest, I guess, within those regulations. So there's been some further reviews, and I think it's a really great tool for councils to have, to be able to have these processes documented, so that in the event that internal resolution is required, that there are clear processes that all councillors and any of those assisting councillors understand and can follow. And I think that would be really beneficial for us going forward, should we need to have it. Hopefully we don't need it, but I think it's a really great insurance policy, so to say, to have it there in case it is required.
Is there any further speakers? No. On that basis, I would now put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. Move to page 186, item 11.4.5, business continuity management policy. The purpose of this report is to adopt the business continuity management policy. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have the motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation as printed on page 186 of our papers as the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I will speak to it just briefly. This is a new policy. It's not a revision of an existing. I believe it originally came up as a internal audit outcome. I'd like to note that it's an ISO 9001 requirement, so we definitely need this policy to be adopted.
Councillor Holloway. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to?
Nothing further to it. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers to the motion? Since I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Page 197, item 11.4.6, strategic risks. The purpose of this report is to adopt council's high-level strategic risks. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt-Kennedy. Can I please move a motion that is reflective of the recommendation as printed on page 197 of our papers this evening?
Councillor Binks, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Binks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Hewitt-Kennedy. Strategic risks are really important in understanding what our risk appetite is at council, and they're a really great framework to help us make those other strategic decisions and to direct council in a way that we can reduce our risks as best as possible. We know, life is not without risk, and council is not immune from risk. So having these strategic risks ensures that we are aware of those and have controls and ways to mitigate that risk as best as possible. And they are a critical tool for our CEO and officers to be able to govern and to be able to operate the organisation that is council.
Jeffrey, would you like to speak to it or reserve your right?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any further speakers on the motion? No. On that basis, I put that to the vote. Those in favour? Motion is carried. Move to page 202, item 11.4.7, Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund Levy Advocacy. The purpose of this report is to endorse the position of Rural Councils Victoria by advocating to the Victorian Government regarding the Emergency Services Volunteer Fund Levy due to take effect on the 1st of July 2025. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the recommendation on page 203 of our papers be adopted as a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Carlson. Is there any opposition to the motion? Okay. Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I would like to speak to it. So this motion is that we endorse the position of Rural Councils Victoria. So letters A, B, and C on the motion are the position of Rural Councils Victoria. This is a very important thing that they advocate on behalf of us and other rural shires, in as much as this is a charge that's due to appear on everyone's rates notices from 1 July 2025 onward. And from the data we've seen so far, it appears to unduly prejudice rural shires and unduly prejudice farmers in terms of the split of how it's collected. So this is being levied by the state government, but they have delegated it to the shires to collect. So we have no control over the way it is calculated. We only collect on their behalf. So it's important that we adopt this motion so that Rural Councils Victoria can advocate how prejudicial this plan is to rural shires.
Councillor Carlson, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
No, I'll speak briefly, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Look, this has been an issue that's really lit up rural Victoria. There's a lot of unfairness and a lot of questions asked about this whole process, both in terms of the way the whole thing's been implemented, lack of consultation. I understand it's stalled in the upper house, I believe. I'm not sure if that's correct. I think it's been sent to committee or something, isn't it? It's turned into a real political bun fight anyway at the state political level, and for good reason. Quite clearly, it's heavily biased against rural communities. And of course, we, as a council, as an organisation, we're loaded with the marvellous task of collecting it all. So, a little bit of quite a lot of natural justice is gone missing in all of this. And it's great to see that the Rural Councils Victoria have really got behind this and are now starting to get some real momentum. So that's obviously they're very much worthy of our support.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Is there any other speakers that would like to speak to the motion? I would like to speak. Oh, you want to speak, Councillor?
I actually still am finding it hard to come to terms with this is actually happening. I'd love to know whether or not we could just flatly refuse to participate. That would be ideal. To think that we would be required to burden our primary producers an additional $2 million, if I'm reading this table correctly, which is a 137% increase in the fire service levy versus this, what's it called, emergency services levy is extraordinary.
I agree.
So we absolutely have to support the advocacy of RDB.
Anyone like to speak against the motion? No. Councillor Jeffrey, you would like to speak to the motion?
I'd just like to add that in addition to what Councillor House has just mentioned, as I understand it, more than 80% of our economy in this shire is driven from the agricultural industry. Adding a burden in addition to the current challenges faced by the agricultural industry is something that we really need to fight against, advocate for our community, and for the sustainability of our agricultural businesses and our families. And it's real lives that are at stake here, and real businesses, and consequently our ability as a shire to raise to generate rate income could be compromised by this proposal, and therefore I support our recommendation very strongly.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Stevens?
Thank you. Just to finish off, it's something that came about, I believe, because of the feedback in relation to major disaster events, where there was pressure being put towards state government to better fund our volunteers and to provide them with the equipment, the training and the support that they needed. But this is a backdoor way of achieving what the community has asked for. This is just duck shoving the responsibility to the local council community, the local rural community. I do mention, though, as much as Councillor has spoken to the fact that the farmers are badly affected by this, they certainly are. We're here to represent everyone, both farmers and townies. And with the state that we find ourselves in, with the interest rates, the cost of living, the uncertainty of so many things in people's lives at the moment, this is going to affect all of our community, not just the farmers, but it is acknowledged that the farmers have got a bigger whack out of this for sure. But we're here to represent everyone, and it just seems to be unjust. But putting that also aside, they're passing the responsibility of collecting this money to local government, using our staff, our time, our costing to collect this money without any certainty of any benefits that it may be bringing to our community. So for all of those reasons combined, I support what we're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I think it's been covered off, but I would like to say that I couldn't support this motion more strongly on the basis of moving around our LGA in the last month. I've met with various mayors. We've had the Hume Region Committee. The angst out there is very real. We are all waiting rain as farmers. And I agree with Councillor Stevens, we're here to represent the entire community, but unfortunately this is targeted very much and it's going to hurt the farming community. As a farmer, I absolutely believe that our farming community are at real mental and mental wellbeing and wellbeing in general risk with something like this being pushed upon them. And we as a council have an issue that we could actually have rate refusal where people just won't pay their rates. There's obviously policies that support that, but I just want people to understand out in the community that we've heard what you said. We hear that this is a real issue, and I take again Councillor Stevens' point about cost of living and interest rate, and it's shared. We're all business owners, we all and we have families, and we understand the costs better than anyone and the cost pressures. So I support this motion on the basis that it will directly impact our community, and as councillors, our job is to advocate strongly for our community. So we support this motion, the Rural Councillors Victoria, and I'll be doing a similar motion to the Hume Region Council as well. So as chair of that. So on that basis, if there's any more speakers, because I think everyone's spoken.
No, but I think it's all been covered. Thank you, Mayor. You're ready.
On that basis, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors carried. I mean, not the councillors carried. The motion is carried. Can we move to page 209? Item 11.4.8, contracts, works, variations and grants awarded under delegation 1st of March 2025 to 31st of March 2025. In line with Council's approach to transparency and good governance, the purpose of this report is to table the contracts, works and grants awarded under delegation in March 2025. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Page 209, I recommend the resolution as listed.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Can I have someone to second that motion, please? Councillor Jeffrey. Is there any opposition to that motion? No. Councillor Carlson, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your vote?
It's just a matter for the public record that we publish these details. It's a monthly event.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? No. On that basis, I will put the motion to a vote. Those in favour? That motion is carried. We now move to item 11.4.9 on page 213, record of informal meetings of councillors March 2025. In line with council approach to transparency and good governance, the purpose of the report is to table the report on informal meetings of councillors for March 2025. Council, are there any questions of clarification before we proceed? Councillors, we have a recommendation. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Anyone? Thank you, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the recommendation is listed on page 213 of our papers be the motion.
Councillor Holloway, can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Carlson, is there anyone that would like to oppose? Is there any opposition to the motion? No. Councillor Holloway, would you like to speak to the motion?
No.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway. Councillor Carlson, would you like to speak to the motion? Are there any other speakers in the motion? No. On that basis, I will move the motion for a vote. All of those in favour? Motion is carried. Page 219, councillors, we now move to item 11.5, communications, engagement and advocacy. No report. 12, notice of motion, nothing to report. 13, notice of rescission, nothing to report. 14, confidential business, nothing to report. 15, urgent business, nothing to report. The next ordinary meeting of Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on the 20th of May at the Euroa Conference Centre, commencing at 4 p.m. There being no further business, the meeting is closed at 5:52 p.m.